Alright everyone, welcome to the most important news of the day that you probably won't hear about from literally anyone else. Even independent content creators, they're going to have to dig for this unless they get a news tip. I got one tip about this from one individual clanker who I guess really has their eye on the ball, so thank you very much for that. Or I wouldn't have even known this happened. I wonder if that's by design. No, really? The lame stream would never cover up a story as big as this one. The Virgin Islands, the AG there, Denise George, has just been sacked as of yesterday. Has been fired by Albert Bryan, the territorial governor. Now, normally that'd be like, okay, if you're in the Virgin Islands, maybe that's major news. It's a territorial situation. Nobody gives a damn on the mainland. Certainly not some expat living in the Netherlands. But it is very, very significant when you consider that only a few days prior, Denise George was the one that launched off against J.P. Morgan, legally accusing them of helping to cover up some of the shenanigans on Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands pertinent to various transactions that they should have been red flagged. This involves Epstein. Now, of course, Epstein killed himself when the cameras weren't rolling and the guards just happened to fall asleep, one of which wasn't fully trained at all, and the roommate wasn't there, and everything was, just lined up perfectly, just like a goddamn 1 in a million chance in order to allow himself to hang himself. Fractures and blunt force trauma aside. Have they cremated the body? I bet they did, just like they did with Michael Hastings against the family's wishes. So he kills himself. Ghislaine Maxwell's in a cushy, low-security federal prison, Club Fed, for a short period of time where she'll have plenty of access to young girls, teenage moms and stuff who have ended up in the low-security system for fraud or something. She'll be diddling a lot of women. They'll look the other way. She'll manage. Don't worry. Poor Ghislaine there won't have a problem. She's in jail for trafficking to literally nobody. Very interesting. But now the AG that wanted to look into J.P. Morgan's finances pertinent to the Epstein case has been sacked in order to effectively defang that investigation. And I do claim that is the reason why. The governor is now saying, well, there were enough problems already with this AG. But you never thought to rebuke or shit-can her until she decided to query J.P. Morgan. I'll tell you what happened. The phone rang in his office from some politician, or probably more than one, some foreign dignitary representing the Shah or something like that, some Raja out in South Asia, some major businessman, some billionaire, military leader, sports star, celeb, whatever it happens to be, saying, can her. Get rid of her because we don't want her looking into the finances. And I'll tell you why they don't want her looking into the J.P. Morgan thing. Right now, the list of people that are compromised by Epstein Island and Ghislaine Maxwell is sealed. You can't read them. We have the flight logs. Those were released long ago, and that gives you an indicator of some of the people that might be involved, but there's no necessary evidence there were any transactions or anything like that. We don't know that because a person went to Little St. James that makes them guilty of partaking in human trafficking or anything else. Because they could have literally been there for an hour, sit down, discuss a business investment deal with Epstein, who did a lot of business on the side with real estate and shit like that too, and then left. We don't have any way of knowing. All we have is the flight log. That being said, what you would have if you investigated J.P. Morgan, this is not part of human trafficking. This is effectively claiming, look, some of these transactions were large enough and in the right, they could be taxable, but then they weren't, there was tax fraud involved. They were illegal for some other reason, not necessarily pertinent to human trafficking. You look at all of these transactions, which she did, and say there's stuff here that J.P. Morgan should have blocked or should have let the government know was happening, specifically because it could be illegal. It could be evidence of fraud, of embezzlement, slush fund activity, insider trading sort of shit. It could be anything, and some of these should have been automatically queried. We're talking about huge sums of money. But if you look into them, what do you need when you have a transaction, a wire transfer or whatever? You need a recipient. You need another party to receive the money or to have given it to Epstein. The problem is you would then have a potential civil suit in which those names would be divulged to the public. Well, if someone appears on the flight logs and they appear on these logs, what does that do for them, for the rich and powerful that were partying with Epstein? Again, it brings up public interest in the case. It may not lead to them being further investigated for criminal wrongdoing beyond, hey, the transaction, you didn't pay taxes on it, pay up. And they're like, well, we're sorry, we're really, really sorry. They can fucking pay it in an afternoon. They don't care. Again, the law is like a spider's web. Flies are caught, wasps go free. That's what we're seeing right here in action in the U.S. Virgin Islands. This is corrupt. It is an attempt to cover it up. It's an attempt to protect all the people that went to the island, because they're the ones that were involved with the transactions. I wonder why this sitting governor there, the territorial governor, who may very well have known what was going on at the time, could have even partaken in it. I wonder why there would be an impetus to squash this particular case. Because it seems to line up. I mean, the only major thing that's happened recently with the Virgin Islands AG is this, so I'm assuming this is the reason for the shit canning. Again, put two and two together. In fact, I think the governor alluded to it. Oh, it's overreach. You're not allowed to do that. You can't. No, not the heckin' banksters. Yeah, they would never do anything corrupt. They would never ignore their own reporting rules or those of the government or of the U.S. Virgin Islands. That banks have literally never done anything like that before. They're all totally squeaky clean. Yeah, collapsing banks have never given golden parachutes to their leaders while screwing all of their stakeholders and all of their clients. Great Recession never happened, in other words. The fact is that this would expose, again, those individuals who are on Ghislaine Maxwell's list, at least in many cases, to more scrutiny. So you don't want this case going forward. I guess the case now will be quietly ended by whoever Denise George's replacement is. Be interesting if she were to decide to weigh in on this, but I mean the legacy media will do what it's trying to do to Donald Trump right now and just not report on it. You may have noticed that the other day with Brooklyn Dad's Cope there. Well, no, none of the main press networks, which is only half true, by the way, showed up at the Mar-a-Lago to talk about his New Year's Eve bash. Ha, what a loser. They've been explicitly told, including Murdoch telling Fox, don't even cover Donald Trump, unless it's something outright negative or it's a third-party thing like J6. You're allowed to talk about Liz Cheney rambling about him, but you're not allowed to have him on for a rebuttal. It's effectively an attempt to silence him. It looks like they're trying to silence Denise George, too. Again, for the reason of covering up the corruption and the resulting corruption of the further cover-up of the client list, of Epstein's death maybe. All of these things would be at least semi-pertinent. Again, even beyond the trafficking, if you just look into who Epstein was getting money from or sending money to, you're going to have a list of names that would be named in the legal documentation. And outside of the human trafficking investigation itself, which is not at work here, it's a case about the bank being malfeasant, those wouldn't be able to be shielded necessarily perpetually by a judge. It's an entirely separate case. And it would begin to look, by the way, a little odd to the public if those names were redacted too. Well, this person embezzled $10 million, but we're not going to tell you their name because the public doesn't need to know. I don't think that would go over too well. And the legacy media might not be able to completely block it out by simply not reporting because it'd be too fucking juicy. Clickbait is a real impetus, at some point. They even occasionally report on the economy being bad, which in 2023 is likely to get far worse. That's about all. Peace out.